Welcome to Dead Headspace. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my friend Brennan LaFaro. Say hello, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
And we're joined by our other friend, Candace Nola. Say hello, Candace.
Hello.
Today, we're talking with two returning guests, two guests that we adore. Let's start off with John Boden. Say hello, John.
Hello.
And you are the author of Snarl. Crazy
I
ass book,
am.
man.
Yeah.
And then we got Robert Ford. Say hello,
Hello,
Robert.
everybody tonight.
And he's the author of The Dead Pennies. And I'm glad I didn't eat during some of that reading. So I'd like to start off with this. You both are very clearly close with each other. I believe you both mention each other in your afterwards. Um, did you guys read each other's books early on? The Dead Pennies and Snarl?
I did not read Dead Pennies.
No, yeah. I don't think I gave that out. I don't think I gave that out to anyone early on. No, I don't think I shared any early drafts or anything like that. Now, Snarl, on the other hand, I got an early draft of that. And when I read that, when I finished it, this is no embellishment, no gravy boating, no anything. I could not speak for a solid 20 minutes. It absolutely floored me. The ending floored me. It just hit me like a sack of rocks. So I am forever humbled by John on that one. But yeah, no, I didn't give out Dead Pennies to anybody very early.
John, what are your immediate thoughts to what Bob just said?
Well, he's told me that before. I mean, I don't know. He gets to read everything almost like he's one of the first ones. Second only, my mom reads everything first. And then it's Bob. Bob and Chad usually simultaneously.
Yeah.
But, then it doesn't go any further until I've heard from them. So,
Interesting. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to throw it to Brenner, Candace, whoever we can figure out who next. But you both, John, you're a bit more, for lack of knowing what word to use over this, purple than John, but I mean than Bob. But you're still very lean with your writing. So I'm wondering if there's a newer writer listening to this, or someone that's just generally looking for maybe a few tips on how to craft it, because you guys have pretty much nailed down how to get this shit right with every book. It's true. John, you first, and Bob, what would you not necessarily tell a newer writer, but any level of writer? What have you found to be the most helpful in going in every new story? Because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'm like, not sure I can do this shit again until I'm deep in it. But what do you guys feel about that?
um, just be truthful to yourself. I mean, you'll know if you're trying to phone it in.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't ever really have a clear idea of where I'm going with anything that I write. I just start with a character and then I just kind of build the vehicle as I'm going along. Or once in a while, I'll have the end first. Like with Snarl, I had the ending first, and then I had to figure out how to get to it. There's no
Yeah,
wrong way. That's probably the best advice. Whatever works for you is 100% not wrong.
yeah, that ended. Not spoiling it, but it was, man, it was both beautiful and after you mentioned your mom a few minutes ago, I'm wondering what her thoughts were on that. But it was also incredibly sad. It was. This might sound hyperbolic. I can't say that word, but it had a Shakespeare like ending. I don't think I've used that comparison before, but it really did. Um, I'm just reading Brennan and Candace's text because we're figuring out who's next, and she made me laugh again. So, John, what, as far as that ending goes, your mom, did she have any comments that kind of stuck with you on that ending specifically?
She just usually tells me that I make her cry.
That's is that a good thing in
But
this
I mean,
case?
yeah, because I've put her in so many of like things I write, so many characters that are like clearly her. So she's used to it. But I
Makes
warn her,
sense.
I was like, something bad might happen to you in this one, so don't take it personal.
Now, Bob, same question for you. Going back to what I first asked John, what would you say has worked for you? Because I know that you're a fucking machine with writing. It's on par with Lansdale and Stephen King the last year and a half for you. It's no stretch of the imagination if you know what you've been working on. So what have you learned during that time? And I know I'm being vague. It's probably annoying to most people. I can't really say what you've been working on unless you want
That's
to
all
talk
right.
about it.
Yeah, I can talk about it to a point.
Okay.
Um, I never used to write very quickly. Not at all. I think over time, because as a writer, you get ideas every day. You hear something that somebody mispronounces, or you see a news article or anything like that. You get ideas all day long. Some of those, as you gain experience, some of the ideas you realize these are trash. These should be thrown away. Others you realize that's probably a solid short story, or this might be a novella, or this has really got some legs to it. This has got a novel size, concept and idea. So I think over time you start, you know, siphoning through those things and sorting them out. But I never used to write quickly at all. About a year in, this is what Pat, you were being vague about. About a year and a half ago, I got approached to ghostwrite some westerns, and I was forced into a high intensity schedule. They are all 71,000 words minimum, and I am on a 5-week turnaround, start to finish. So I am currently on number 13 since not August of 2022. So yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I know it's insane. But through the school of hard knocks, I definitely learned some things that work for me. And it's a mental game, really. My mantra, and this is no joke, I say this 4 or 5 times a day. I look at the word count. If it's a brand new one, I go, okay, I got 71,000 words to go. That ain't shit. That is the mantra I repeat to myself over and over and over again, as just a mental encouragement. When I have an outline, that I created and follow. So, at the beginning of the outline, as I start rushing through it, I need to know what I refer to as the bitch of the bunch. The bitch of the bunch is the very first sentence of the chapter that I'm working on. If I got that, well, then I just keep on writing until it feels right, and I've hit my word count. So there's dumb little, mental gymnastic tricks that I've learned to force productivity and get it going. But, some days are better than others, but it's like any job, on the days that are good, the world disappears. And suddenly I've, ripped through 6,000 or 7,000 words without even thinking about it. I just think, John's right, though. Those are the tips that work for me. But John's right. There's no wrong way or right way to do it. It's just whatever feels right and whatever you find works for you. Follow that. John, flies by the seat of his pants on things that he writes for sometimes. He says he has the ending on some. I have the ending on a lot of mine, but not everything. When John and I write, we definitely fly by the seat of our pants when working on a project together.
Yes, we do.
But it's yeah, whatever feels right, whatever works goes for you.
How do you? I probably asked this before when we've talked, but how 13 novels, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know how many more you got, but like, how do you come up with newer concepts? Because I imagine they're all in the same universe. I don't think we've ever actually broken it
Yeah.
down, but for that many words per novel,
Mhm.
I can't even pretend to know how that would be possible.
It's well, put it this way, stop thinking about it that it's how do you come up with that many stories in that world or that universe? Think of it as just modern day. How many story ideas can you come up with if you just sit down for a week, walk around town, go visit a graveyard, go sit in the hospital, go sit in the cemetery, look around? You're going to come up with enough ideas, and again, as I said earlier, some of those are just going to be short stories. Some of those are going to be novels. If you sit down and just think about things for a week, you'll come up with at least 3 ideas that are novel length. And I just keep doing that. There are certain things, that fit into that Western sort of, trope, however, because at the end of the day, all I'm writing is pulp Western novels, but there's a hero, there's an outlaw, it's, a revenge tale, or it's, there's certain tropes that kind of fall in line. But the stories, I've already got the next 4 already kind of setting aside, waiting to be outlined. I just haven't done them yet. But you just get into a rhythm, and the more you write in that universe or whatever, the more starts hitting you and coming to you on that end.
One more, I promise, and Brennan jump in. Okay, so I know, Bob, your kids are growing up too. Do you just play a hypothetical game with me? If your kids were younger, like the age where they're very dependent on you, do you think it would be possible to do that? Because I want to talk about this quite often with writers, but I honestly forget about bringing it up usually.
Sure.
So with you, I know a lot of your work is based on fatherhood and family. So I'm wondering if you had to have little ones, would you be able to really push through? I'm not even saying 13 novels, but cut it in half. Even is that possible, or even one? Is it possible to stick to that?
Yeah, I think it's possible, and I think a lot of writers, they look at the full length word count of a novel, and that kind of panics them. The thing is, you're not in a race with anyone on earth but yourself. Just keep that in mind. It's like you can get it done when you're getting it done. That's the goal. So, but if you start looking at, okay, how many words can I write in an hour? Okay, can I write 1,000 words in an hour? Or does it need to be shifted back to 500? Okay, well, if it's 500, you can squeeze in, if you really want to finish a novel, even with young children, in the early morning hours before the household turns into chaos, you can carve out an hour. You can carve out an hour to do 500 to 1,000 words. At the end of the day, after the kids are asleep and put in bed, you can squeeze in somehow an hour there. If it doesn't happen to be in one chunk, well, then do 2 30-minute, do half hours. You can break through that somehow, some way. And other writers, you look at John Grisham. He wrote his novels on legal pads when he was in court. It was like if you want to do it, you'll find a way. Is it more difficult with young kids? Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I used to run an ad agency with my kids were very little, and I didn't get to write until, midnight till 2 a.m. And then I would get up at 7:30 and start the day all over again, and it wears you down. Something is going to sacrifice. It's going to be a relationship, with your spouse, or it's going to, something's going to suffer. Let's not say sacrifice, but something's going to suffer a little bit. And in the moments that you're not writing, you just make up for it the best you can.
God damn, that hits hard.
Bad as that sounds.
Brennan, jump in, buddy.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I'm a big believer in the idea that if it's something you really want to do, that you'll find the time. You think of the people that say, well, I don't have time to write, and you wonder, how much time are you spending on Netflix? Are you getting 8 hours of sleep a night? That's ridiculous. Who's doing that? But if it's something you want to get done, you'll get it done.
Yeah.
John, I want to go back to something that you said, talking about how the kind of the final scene in Snarl, and anybody who's read it knows exactly what scene, you mean, how that was the first thing that came to you. Now, I want to ask this in a way where you can talk about it without giving specifics, but when you start with just the final scene of a book, what kind of trip do you take to go back and, you know, kind of explore different paths and figure out how the story is going to end up at that point? Like, how does your mind work to craft a story in that way?
Not in a very linear way. So like I said, I got that final the image. I got the image of the end. So I already knew I wanted to try and do. I had actually hoped that was going to be just like a straight noir, rural kind of crimey Lansdale sort of book. It was going to just be like straight, but because I can't do that, it had to get weird. So then, like, you know, Marlon's brother ended up going, you know, making an appearance, and then it just, well, there went the straight for it. But so I had the end, and I had some of the characters, and I had kind of like the crimey idea, but I had to just kind of figure out how I was going to get from the beginning to that end. And I didn't really, it just kind of happened. I didn't really think it out. I very rarely do. It's almost, I don't know, it's almost like I kind of channel something when I do that sort of thing. Like I did it with Spun Gunyon as well. I kind of had touch points that I had to stitch together, and I wasn't quite sure how or what I was going to do until I did it. That sounds so lame out loud.
No, man. The thing is that when you do write by the seat of your pants, sometimes it is a process that you just, it works in your head, even if you can't explain how it works. And frankly, if you could explain how it worked, it almost feels like it would take some of the magic away.
Yeah, like I will say that Snarl and the processes between Snarl and Spun Gunyon were very similar because I wrote that one I had the ending first.
Yeah. And I love that one. That's, in fact, I would say, you know, it's hard to pick a favorite Boden book, but Spun Gunyon and Snarl are up there. And I almost want to kind of do a three-way tie with Walk the Darkness Down. You know, I love that one. I want to ask, and you've said it before on here that you are not a fast writer, not in comparison to Mr. Ford over there. So I'm kind of curious, is it due to, you know, kind of giving yourself breaks to allow the story to kind of formulate in your mind a little bit? Is it to going back and editing? Is it to something else? What kind of?
It's mainly because I have a pretty demanding day job. I'm management. I'm bakery manager for a grocery chain. So I work like from 2 in the morning until noon, 5 days a week minimum. So I come home and I nap for a couple hours. And then some days, if my brain's not overtired, I can write a little bit. If my brain's really like tired or too buzzy, I can't concentrate. So then I don't. I'm not one of those people that's going to like sit here and go, I have to write every day because it it's not worth what comes out's not going to be worth it if I'm not able to concentrate.
Mm.
So I might have like 1 or 2 good writing days a week, or I might go 2 weeks where I don't write anything. Like I'm in the middle of the holiday rush, which is like super busy at the grocery store. So I haven't written anything in like almost 3 weeks now. But then once things ease up, then I'll probably get some writing done.
Now, part of the reason I ask that is because I am curious about your editing process, because when I read your writing, there's word choice is something that comes to mind. There's verbs, and there's, you know, choices for metaphors, and sometimes just, you know, random words that no other writer would put in there. And I mean that in the absolute most complimentary way. Bob's nodding because he knows exactly what I mean, but there's there are choices in there that make a Boden book a Boden book. And I wonder how much of that flows out on the first try. And I almost want you to say none because it would make me feel bad. But
well, I'm gonna hurt your feelings.
Hurt them, man.
I don't edit. It I it just it comes out. Any of the editing that happens is usually after Bob reads it, because he points out and corrects things for me, and then that's what I'll fix, like that kind of editing. But as far as like word choices and where'd those balloons come from?
Yeah, that happens.
God damn it, Brennan, you're not supposed to acknowledge them.
As far as like the word choices and stuff, a lot of that's just how my brain works. A lot of the time.
It's voice, man. It's absolutely voice, and it's one of the things that make it that just makes your work special. I really thought I turned off the fucking balloons. I thought I figured that out.
It was very
Write the
fun.
magic word, that's all.
I don't even know what triggers the balloons. I can't figure it out. They just go off every once in a while. Candace,
Last
I'm gonna throw
episode
it
was
to
when
you.
it started.
Yeah,
Mm.
I've been quiet long enough. First of all, wow. I have so many words for both of you that I kind of don't even know where to start. Snarl. Let's start with Snarl because holy shit.
Accurate.
That's all I have to say about that. If anyone hasn't read it, please fix that. Um, for as I can't even say what I want to say now. Um, your writing process, how you were saying you don't edit and it just tends to come out that way. That's a lot of how I write as well. It just whatever comes out comes out. I don't really go and edit anything. I don't change anything. I will fix, punctuation, things like that. But typically, whatever comes out on the page is how it stays. So I understand that a lot. I probably write a whole lot like you do when it comes to sort of winging things and you get the ending in mind and you sort of like connect the dots to get back there as you're building the story. So all of that actually made a whole hell of a lot of sense to me because that's pretty much how I write everything. What I want to ask though, when you were going through the process of connecting all of those touch points, I guess is the word that you had used. What was there a point where you kind of felt a little bit lost as to where do I go now? Like, did you reach a point to where it just wasn't coming as far as what to do next? And if so, what do you normally do to sort of work that out? Do you have like a mental process? Do you take a break? Do you just push through until it works?
Hmm. There were, I think the only thing I really struggled with, I don't really know how to address this. I don't want to I don't want to spoil stuff. Um, when Marlon was planning his confrontation,
Okay.
I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to handle that because if you've read most of my stuff, you guys know I don't go the familiar narrative linear path. Like I jump. There's time jump.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like there's just you just assume from chapter 1 to chapter 3, we figure out what's going on. Some things have happened between there that you didn't get to see. That's
Mhm.
just because that's how life is.
Right.
Um, so I had to try and figure out how far I wanted to go with that. And I just went with, I could have gone like the super actiony, Hollywood way, but I decided to go with the more realistic. This is just how quickly things escalate in real life with no warning kind of way.
Mhm.
And that's just kind of how I reconciled that. But I don't really labor on it too much like that.
Yeah. Okay. I have a few techniques that I use. Normally, I'll switch hats and I'll work on another story while that one kind of processes. So I
Yeah,
just kind of
I've
like,
done that too.
yeah, I just change hats and I let it sit for a little bit and then I come back to it. Let's go over to Bob for a minute because your story, sir, sir. Oh my God.
I want some milk.
Sir.
I've read thousands of books in my lifetime. we're not even going to get into what I've read in the last 5 years and what I have accumulated behind me. All that being said, I'm a horror fan, major, since childhood. I'm one of those people that you can't scare easily. There are times, but I'm so used to horror and every trick in the book and the disturbing and the unsettling and the jump scares and all the tropes that I'm like, okay, yeah, it was good. You, sir. Yeah, yeah. I was looking over my shoulder the other night, like, the hell was that? While I'm rereading your book to get ready for this show, and I was so legitimately creeped out by the descriptions in what was happening in this book, not to mention the utter heartbreak that is like wrapped all the way into the story, but the creepiness of it and just the unsettling. Well done, because I've not had that feeling in a long time. Long time. I've enjoyed a lot of what I've read. I've greatly enjoyed many, many of the books that I've read, and they've all been well written and they all have met the mark, but unsettling me? Yeah,
that's some kind words to hear because
I was I
I
was thoroughly
understand that
impressed.
cynicism. I understand the pushback because you're a writer. You know what's behind the curtain.
Mhm.
You know what's there. So
Yeah.
it takes a lot. I don't remember the last time I got scared from a horror novel. I have
Mhm.
no idea. The last one
Yeah.
that unsettled me was The Troop by Nick Cutter.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Oh, that
that
That's a good
was
one.
I gotta read
that
that book. God
so
damn, you
bothered the
good.
hell
sold
out
me
of
on
me.
it.
Yeah,
Have you not read the truth? Yeah.
There's
yeah.
so many fucking books to read.
But no,
Fair.
there were some scenes in the Dead Pennies I wrote that I creeped myself out on, and I was like,
Yeah.
all right, this is a good sign, because I had the overall concepts, kind of nailed down, but certain individual scenes, those were ones that just flowed out in the moment. I knew,
Yeah.
like, I think the outliner knows where something really scary happens in this one, or
Mm.
something mildly scary happens. So that was the extent, and yeah, some of the scenes that come out in there, yeah, they creeped me out. So I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear
yeah.
that.
Well done. That was actually going to be, that was where I was headed with that. Like, did you creep yourself out at all? But since you answered that, so my next thought is the title alone. Where did that come from? Because when I saw the title originally, I immediately knew what you meant. And I liked the way that it was described in the story when you explained sort of where the term came from. But how did you come up with that? Was it something you heard? Is there a backstory to this?
Yeah,
Because when you see it and you understand what you're talking about, it's so sad and heartbreaking. Like immediately when you apply that other meaning to it, and we're not talking about the coin.
sure.
So how did that come about?
I used to work with a guy named Josh, and he knew that I wrote horror, and he was
Mm,
talking about, he's like, you need a website, man. He's like, you can't just use your name, because I was talking about getting anything with the name Robert Ford is almost impossible because he's the guy who shot Jesse James. So trying to do something and find that is almost, impossible. So he was trying to come up with titles or web addresses for me, and he said, just call it the Dead Pennies, man. And I was like, well, what does that mean? He's like, I don't know. And then he just walks away, and that was the end of that conversation. So the Dead Pennies stuck in my mind, and it rattled around for a few years, and my subconscious was working on it.
yeah.
And it first attached to the coin aspect because I mentally was trying to fictionalize a definition of what the Dead Pennies meant.
Mm,
So I arrived at pennies that were too damaged, they were, they were unfit for circulation. And I'll explain. And in the novel The Dead Pennies, that same nickname is applied to children in a state school.
Yeah.
They were deemed unfit for circulation and hidden
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. That struck me, that line, that like just pain, because I have kids and I know many kids nowadays who years ago would have been put in those types of homes, and that line, God, it hit deep. Like unfit for circulation. That was just like that haunted me through the whole story because I just kept hearing that line, and then I'm visualizing these children as we're going through it, and yeah, yeah. Well done.
Thanks.
Just
Thank you, Kate.
well done. I want to switch back and ask John one more question, and I'm gonna come back, and then we'll let Patrick talk again because he had a good 20 minutes to begin with. I'm
Fair,
just saying.
fair enough.
So, John, back to Snarl, which I love. Did I say that, by the way?
You did. Thank you.
Okay. Incredible. And I know Patrick, I think he applied that purple word to it. We're not going to talk about that because I wouldn't claim purple. Um, I don't know. I don't like that phrase,
I don't know.
but
You're smarter. What's a better word?
beautifully written,
Okay.
poetic,
Poetic.
lyrical, descriptive without being overly so, but descriptive enough that you kind of want to jump inside the story and rub it on your face and just let the ink like tattoo you forever.
John,
Because those
that is the
words,
review right there, that entire chunk.
that whole thing, those words are
Got the
like
timestamp.
tattooed on my flesh because it's not a line, it's not a quote. It's I want it made into a flesh blanket, and I want to roll myself inside it and be stitched into it whole because that was just so poetically written. It's immersive to where you kind of want to crawl inside of it and stay there. It's I don't know where that came from, but that was my thought for your book. So there you go. I want a flesh suit made of your book. Thank you. Let's talk to tattoo artist. I have no idea. Anyway,
I'm not really sure what to say.
I don't know either,
None of
except
us
you
are.
made
It's
me
cool.
feel like I want to see these words visually tangible things and I want to wear them on my body. Does that work?
I'm sure
Did you
Okay.
read Misery, John?
I have.
Don't piss her off, buddy.
Hey now. Anyway, sir, back
Sorry.
to this sidetracking me from wanting me to wear your entire novel like a suit. Um, Favorite character to write other than the mother, because that's well established. And I love the fact that you write her into so many of your books. I started doing that with my mom too, but I haven't told her yet.
My mom figured it out without Behind the Barn.
Uh,
She figured it out right away.
so aside from your mom for this one, was there a favorite that you enjoyed writing over the others? Maybe one you put a little bit more heart into, or maybe just one you had a lot more like fun with.
I really liked Sorrow and Wade.
Yeah,
They were a lot of fun
yeah.
because there were probably at least a dozen guys like that in my town growing up.
I had visuals of them.
Yeah.
I had visuals. So nice. Were they based off of a certain one or just
No,
kind of
not
a
really.
combination of just guys like that?
Kind of composites, yeah. Sora was kind of a composite of the three bosses I had when I was 15. I worked for the township during the summer, and
Mm,
so we would meet at the township building in the morning, and we would go and do like maintenance around town, like patching potholes and cutting weeds and like the vacant lots and whatnot.
yeah.
And the three bosses I had, they were all good guys, but they were a little bit coarse, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I decided to composite them together, give them an unwieldy prosthetic leg, There we go.
Loved it. I I um I liked their relationship a lot. Like I actually know some people like them, and I could hear their whole back and forth in my head quite clearly. So yeah, I
They
think
were
the
fun.
whole book was just phenomenal, as we've clearly established. But the dialogue in it was so relatable and so raw, especially your main character. Um, his I think that's what floored me more than anything was his emotions. You don't typically see that with a male lead character with the outpouring of emotions, the way that he was being expressed in this. And I love that so much because he's a writer and you establish that from the jump, but the way he speaks and the way that he writes and the emotions that just carry him through this whole thing, I love that so much because it's rare to see something like that in a horror novel, let alone any novel. Most men are not written to be emotional like that, and I just thought that was just excellent. So
I mean, I don't know. I cry at commercials, so I mean,
I didn't say all, I said most. You don't really see the
so
depiction of that. So I
I try to
really
write what I know.
appreciated that.
So if that's what I do,
Hey, I like the fact that you cry at commercials.
I
I
do.
cry at Disney movies.
Well, what kind of commercials? Like Budweiser commercials, or
Wow, Pat,
No,
really?
just joking, man. I'm being an asshole.
Anywho, we'll go back to Bob for my question, and then we'll throw it back to one of my two co-hosts here.
Brennan.
And I really have the same question with you, Bob. Favorite character within the story itself that you either most enjoyed writing or had the most fun with?
I'm I have to select three
Okay.
because the children of the ward, Milk, Flour, and Sugar, their personalities, so to speak, sort of developed on the fly.
Mm,
And working my way into some of the more disgusting scenes, but as well as some of the creepy scenes where their behavior started kind of showing the character Cora Jean at the time, started showing her who they really were.
mm,
I enjoyed that because the children didn't really have a lot of dialogue.
right.
So I had to set them apart with their personalities alone.
Mm.
And yeah, no, I had a blast doing that. That was some of the scenes that I creeped myself out on. I was like, okay, well, that works. I'll set this down for the night. But yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Good. All right, well, I suppose I'll throw it over to Brennan for now.
Actually, kind of following up on that, I was wondering if there were any schools or institutions that inspired the story, any real life stories.
Yes, absolutely. I came across sometimes I have, if I'm writing notes or outline, type of part of the development, I'll throw a documentary, a weird whatever documentary on the background, just listen to it. And I came across a documentary about a state school in New York called Willowbrook, and it was absolutely horrendous. The conditions were terrible. Geraldo Rivera was a reporter that did a sort of an expose on it and revealed how awful it was. It was a state school that was built for about 4,000 residents, and it jumped to 6,000 residents very rapidly. So there was one nurse assigned to basically 60 or 70 patients. And these children were all in varying states of, dealing with physical, mental challenges, or both. And the conditions just struck a nerve with me. And I went, man, that is absolutely horrendous, and that same writer situation. What if, and it went from there. But yeah, it was based on Willowbrook. It was a terrible, terrible situation. It was, a lot of people cheered when that place was shut down.
I bet.
Yeah, it reminded me. We had talked to Tananarive Due recently. Her book, The Reformatory, was based on real life school in, or I don't know if school is the right word, but an institution in Florida, and it is absolutely wild. Those places that exist in the world and how terribly run they are, and
Yeah.
the amount of backs that get turned
Oh,
on
yeah.
it, and even how into modern times they run. You hear a story about this and you're like, well, that must have happened in the 30s, in the 60s, whatever.
Oh, yeah,
Not at all, not at all.
no, no.
And kind of,
They were so open to corruption, because a lot of them were getting funded by the government, or at least partially. So yeah, when there were government funds at stake that were flowing in, the amount of corruption, the possibilities were terrible. When you put the staff at some of these places in a position of power, but they're also in an extremely stressful situation where they're supposed to be caring, for these people. Yet something, what could go wrong? What could go wrong with that? No, it's an awful, awful situation. But yeah, like you said, I expected to hear some of those things that took place years and years ago. And I'm like, this wasn't really that long ago. Is this still, is this kind of thing still going on today? Sadly, I'm sure it is, but no, it's an awful situation.
yeah, when you read about places like that got shut down in like 2013 or something, you have to
Yeah.
almost automatically jump to the conclusion that there are places that didn't get shut down in 2013, and we just don't know about them yet, because like the places that lasted up until that point in time only lasted that long because of the amount of people who were willing to turn a blind eye to it, which means that we're still turning a blind eye to others. And it's, like you said, there's a stress to it, but there's a responsibility and a special place in hell for,
Oh yeah.
people who don't meet that responsibility, my opinion. Let's lighten it a little bit. So you guys mentioned, kind of in passing, that you have collaborated on a few books, and I love talking about collaboration process. So I'd love to hear you both talk a little bit about writing the Knuckle Bucket Thang series. Bob, you want to start out?
Sure. I've known John for years. He's just, he's become a brother. He's, easily one of my best friends. And we had, kind of read each other for a while. And then, one day John said, I think it was after one of my readings, John came up and said, it sounds like your family and my family might have hung out together when they were younger at cookouts or something. And we got to talking a little bit more because John speaks like I speak. We understand some of the vernacular that each other uses right away. And we kept talking about the possibility of writing together. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. It sounds like a blast. I'd love to. And I had a scrapbook that I started cutting out these weird newspaper clippings of things that caught my attention. And I was flipping through one day and I came across this article about, and I think there's been a documentary that's been made about it now, but it was about a pastor who tried to kill his wife with rattlesnakes. And I took a photograph of it and I sent it to John. And I said, what do you think about doing something like this? And of course, John was into it, but the idea completely changed and evolved. John wrote, some initial pages and sent it, and that was it. When I read those initial pages, I was like, we are out of here. We are off and running, and that was that. And we just ran with it. No outline, no, maybe a light discussion on what was going to take place, but not much. And every time I got an email from John with a new chapter in it, I mean, it's, it's like, it still is. We're working together now on the third Knuckle Bucket series, but it's every time I get an email, it's like a Christmas present. It's like, okay, what do I got now? And I can't wait to get back into it and work with him. So Yeah, no, it's awesome. Love working with John.
John, you
when
want to
we
put in?
um I think it's funny because our work together is nothing like our singular work. Like, I mean, there are little bits of it. Like, I mean, you can if there are bits where you can tell who wrote what. Like, if you read Rattlesnake Kisses, the
Mhm.
opening chapter, I wrote that, and you can kind of tell because it's reminiscent of the other stuff. Then once we get the groove gone and
Yeah.
the banter starts and like all the craziness happens, it's not anything like what I do or a lot like what
We've
he
both
does.
been blamed for something the other wrote as
Yes,
well.
that was Cattywampus that did that.
Yes.
Um, and it's fun. It's just really fun, and we just go for it. There's nothing that's off limits. My goodness, when we finish Black Sav, I that thing is like a doorstop compared to what we've normally done. What are we at? We're like close to 60,000 words, aren't
I
we?
think we're creeping up on 60 on this one. Yeah.
And it's
I think
just
Rattlesnake, I think, was around 40 or 45, I think.
and it's if you thought Cattywampus was raunchy and rough, you you don't even know.
But the thing is, I forget who Candace, I think it might have been you discussing dialogue. That John's dialogue felt natural and real and just pure and truthful. Um, I think that's something, John, you and I both have always been focused on. If that dialogue feels real to the character and it fits, then we roll with it.
Mhm.
I think you and I have always studied how other people talk in real life around us,
I've
and the
spent my
different
life
personalities.
listening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, that is one thing that I just love is the dialogue that we share back and forth.
I want to dive deep more into that, where you, as a writer or maybe another type of artist, when you stop and think of the world around you, narration, it really makes things different in the sense where you can start to work on your focal points and stories, because like you might not think about, you can just say like the person walked across the street, but like there can be a lot added to that, and all you got to do is look around. So first I'll start with you, Bob. Is there anything else you want to kind of throw there? Because I wrote a few years before I actually heard that advice, where
Mhm.
if you think of the world as a narrator or writer, then you're going to start to pick up on a whole lot more. So I'd love to hear what you got to say about that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And it, it's when one thing that I've learned over time is it does pay to be specific on certain things. You know, did your character drink a beer? No, no, they didn't drink a beer. They drank a Pabst Blue Ribbon or they drank a Heineken. And I'm using those two things as examples because they're different ends of the range. If they're drinking a Pabst Blue Ribbon, that kind of paints immediately, just with that sentence, it paints a certain picture. As opposed to he cracked open a Heineken. Okay, that paints a different picture. Did he drive a two-door sedan? No, he didn't do that. He drove a rusted out Honda, or he drove. All those details help paint that picture of that personality of who that person is, and I think paying attention to those kind of details, really does pay off because a lot of times as you're laying those details slowly, like seasoning, it does start to build that picture of the character so that, when you decide for them to do certain things and act a certain way, it's all backed up. Yes, of course that rings true, because of all the details that you laid before. And I know John with the details that he paints is very, very much the same way. It's, all of those attention, all of those points of detail, they do build up and they make sense. Of course, John just makes his sound an awful lot prettier than mine, but they all still are important. What do you think, John?
Um, there's nothing as important as people watching. Yeah. So I've worked in retail for 27 years. So I watch people all day long. And the fun thing about working in like in the environment I work in, I'm in the store, but I'm back behind the counter, and people tend to think that that counter is like a solid brick wall. Like they don't seem to realize that we back there can watch what's going on out there. So you get to watch people almost unaware. And there's nothing more educational than that. People not knowing that you're watching that. So you get to see people that like look like, they've just lost their best friend because maybe they have, or you don't have any idea what they're going through. And they're just, that little bit of shopping, it might be the only respite they have for the day. And you just all kinds of little points and things that, you just consider. And if you're me, you just save them in the back of your head for later and use them.
Makes me wonder how many other writers I'm walking by on a daily basis. Like, there's all the people we've talked to. There's all sorts of walks of life. Everybody does every type of job. I'm sure there's more than people listening to this. I'm sure they're gonna start thinking about it now. And I mean, just if I see someone kind of doing what you're doing, John, because I used to work at a grocery store for a few years. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things there because people are, for the most part, they got focus on, like when I go shopping, I'm like, oh, what do I gotta get? And then I'm focused on the kid, and I'm not paying attention to who's paying attention to me.
I don't know. I watch people and I listen. I listen to people talk all the time. Not like listen, like eavesdrop and really try to get into their shit. But I listen to certain, like, just little snippets and things that people have said, and it just, that's how you can write true dialogue. Like just write like people talk. Nothing puts me off worse than when I'm reading something is like somebody like just expounds this great big long rambling prose, and you're just like, dude, nobody does that.
That's not true. Tarantino writes that shit all the time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you put enough F words in there, it's real, I guess.
Have you heard someone in a real life scenario? Have you heard someone say something where maybe you don't say it out loud, but you go, "What the fuck?" Is that
all the
real?
time? I used to actually have a notebook where I kept little snippets of shit. Like we were walking through a flea market. This was every bit of like 30 years ago, I bet. And I heard some woman in front of us say, "He's the man when it comes to eating bananas. He's the banana eating fool." And it was so stupid. And I didn't know what the rest of the context was.
Doesn't matter.
It was just perfect.
So we'll end on that. This is a great time to wrap up, and we'll start with where can people follow you, Bob?
Yeah, you can come follow me on robertfordauthor.com. I have secured a Substack and am ready to launch that in the next couple of weeks, finally. And all the other social media channels, Twitter, Instagram. I don't play on Twitter as much as I used to, but Instagram, you can always find me on there posting.
Not a bad thing, man. Twitter's a hellhole sometimes,
Yeah.
Always. John, where can people follow you?
I'm on most of the social media stuff. I'm mostly active on Facebook. I'm on the other ones. I don't really do too much on them. I don't know.
Candace, where can people follow you?
I'm on all the socials. Facebook, I'm most active on Twitter, unfortunately, or my website, Uncomfortably Dark.
Brennan.
BrennanLafaro.com and on most of the social things.
Same for me. PR McDonough or the show, Dead Headspace, whoever social social network can't think or talk. Whatever social network you use, if it's the main one, Twitter, TikTok, we'll probably be there. Final thoughts. Start with you, John.
Let me think. I don't really know. Snarl's out. People like it. That's great. I'm glad people like it. I do have a new one with Chad coming out in February.
Chad Lutsky, for those that don't.
It's called The Bed Makers, and it's actually more of it's the small town noir crime straight story that I attempted with Snarl, but we managed to pull it off and not make it weird.
Wondering if it's like Neon Owl, because that was really by Chad. That was a really, really good story.
Sort of, maybe. Not really.
Oh, I thought you meant it wasn't real. Okay. We are the children. Oh, I'm not gonna include myself. You guys are the children of Lansdale, that's for sure.
We do like his stuff a lot.
Yeah. So I don't want to cut you off. Any more final thoughts, or shall we pass it to
Just
Bob?
moving on. Just thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure, man. Bob.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'll start off. Thanks, for all you guys for having us over and talk about things tonight. Right now, I'm still consistently working on the Western project, but my next horror novel, I am knee deep working on the final notes for that. It is going back to a much harsher tone of voice, I guess, more like my last novel, Burner.
Oh shit.
So, but that is ramping up pretty well. And John and I are closing in on the first full draft of Black Salve. We are very close. Life has slapped us around a little bit.
We've been saying it for years, as Chad reminds me every
Yeah.
time. He's like, dude, you've been saying this is almost done for 3 years now.
That's all right. That's all right. When it's done, then Chad reads it, then we'll see what he's got to say. But
And you didn't mention it, Bob, but people really need to check out your novelette, Larva Me Tender.
Oh yeah, Larva Me Tender.
I'm not familiar with that, actually.
Yeah, that's
nuts.
I'm going to be doing a video reading post for that. I've been slacking. I need to do a post for that.
It's so good.
But yeah, no, like I say, John and I are always hustling, but we're closing in the end of Black Salve, and there'll be plenty for people to read from us in the near future.
Nice. Brennan.
Thanks for coming to hang out with us on a Monday night. We are overjoyed to have you guys, and both your work is just top notch. I haven't read a thing by either one of you that I didn't absolutely love, that I didn't absolutely blast through and just crave more. So whatever you put out next, I got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Candace.
Just the usual. Thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for your words. And John, I'm gonna need that Skinsuit of Snarl, so I don't know who we're gonna talk to about that.
I'm not sure.
That is my quote of the day. Yeah, so great work on each one of your books. Just amazing. So send me all your arts. Just send me everything. I just want it. I want to wear it on my body. I don't know what else to say to that. We're just going to keep saying that because it's fun and it gives you a visual that I know you're just, why not? But anyway, thanks for your time here tonight. It always is a good time to talk to amazing gentlemen such as yourselves.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much.
And hopefully we'll see you again next time.
Patrick. Okay, thank you, Patrick. So my final thoughts are read Snarl. It's fucking great. I don't know why I just did that shit, but
wow, I have no idea.
I don't know. We're both wild and crazy kids tonight. Read the Dead Pennies, which by the way, going way back to earlier, but I think it was Candace saying that Bob, you do unconventional stuff with what you think will happen, and then it doesn't. So I mean, I told you as I read it, well, after I read it, but Flower, there's one scene where she's got a baby, and oh my god, that's the part where I'm like, you motherfucker, I'm glad I wasn't eating. So read those two. It's great. It's gonna haunt me for a long time. Read those two books. Candace just had this new anthology that came out called Dark Disasters. It's wonderful. It's really great. I would check that out. Check out Brennan's book that's coming out next year called The Demon of Devil's Cavern. The artwork is fucking cool. I'm gonna plug my own shit. Hot Iron Cold Blood. Buy it. It's good. It's not because I did it, but it's good. So I appreciate you guys being here. We want you back. Whatever you guys want.
Guys.
Anytime, sir.
And everyone, next episode is 224. We have Lloyd, DeVay, Richards, and Marguerite Richards. Lloyd blew the fuck up on TikTok. We're talking like 50 million plus for his first book, Stone Maidens, which is an excellent thriller. We're going to be talking to them next episode, so stay tuned for that. And as always, you have many choices in podcasts. Thank you for picking us. Bye bye.